Not a Team Player is a podcast that brings China to the world from a Western point of view. We talk to real people who have lived and worked in both China and the West and aim to bridge the divide that traditional media creates and promotes. On this show, we're going to do things a little bit differently because, let's face it, I'm not a team player. Welcome to another edition of Not a Team Player. I'm your host, Trevor Metz, and I'm with a guy today that I'm very intrigued by his story. All right. You know, there's not a lot of guys that I really kind of want to hear their story, but this is a gentleman that I do. This is Antoine Mansuy.
Mansuy. Yes.
I can never get it right.
Very good. That was close.
Come on. So the deal with Antoine here is Antoine's a self-made man. Mm-hmm. He came over to China after meeting his wife in London. He's from the northeastern part of France, but he was working in London, met his wife, and decided to move over here. And the cool thing about Antoine is that he started his own F&B thing, even though he was never a chef, never formally trained. Always had a bit of a problem with authority, which I do as well. Hence the name of the show.
I still do.
And this is it, right? So you basically had to carve out a niche for yourself.
Yeah.
And so tell me about that. How did it all come about?
Well, I don't know. No one would employ me. I had to kind of find a way to work. The only person that would employ me was my wife. So
yeah, here we go.
She's getting crazy every day. I tried the office life. It didn't work. I didn't like it so much, and they didn't like me either. So I started working in bars and restaurants. Just that was it, you know, from the bottom up, washing the dishes, peeling the carrots, and you know all of this sort of stuff up to where I am now.
Well, what I like about this entire story is that you came over because you met a girl, basically.
Yes, yeah.
And then it was that time when we were seeing the financial crisis.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as bad here as it was everywhere else, and you probably saw some opportunity.
I was still in London back then, so it was. I had to adjust my career plan if I had a plan. So I lost my office job, so I started working in F&B. And then after a few years, we moved to China. It was kind of over back then. I moved here in 2012, so like 8 years ago.
Right.
Now it's May 2020. So yeah, about 8 years ago.
All right. So when you came over, you don't know how to cook necessarily. Well, you knew how to cook.
I worked in a few kitchens. I knew how to cook. Basically, what I know is I knew good food. I know what, you know, when things taste good, you know, it's just, it's not about the technique. I don't know how to make things pretty.
So you're like me in the sense that I know what I like when I taste it, but my knife skills are pretty garbage.
Yeah. Well, I've learned with a knife.
Let me just start with this too. I probably should have started off with this. Antoine has 3 places on his own now. He has 3 different F&B outlets of various sizes, and you partner up with various cafe. You do the food for Korean coffee.
Yeah, we run their kitchens basically, so we provide the stuff and all that, and the ingredients.
So he's a self-made man. He's a man that basically is a bit like me, except for he seems to have been doing a little bit better. He didn't really have a full education when it comes to the culinary arts.
No, yes.
We don't really know. Like, I know a lot of the science. I've always been interested in cooking. I imagine you're the same way.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And where did that come from?
Well, you know, coming from the countryside that everybody's got a garden, and then you live where I'm from is a forest, but you could have the beach if you're on the ocean or whatever. But no matter what, it's nature. So you have nature provides, and you get used to having mushroom growing in the forest. You get used to having your grandfather growing raspberries for you, and you know what I mean. All this stuff which you kind of take them for granted. You basically you don't think about it.
It's just part of life.
Exactly. It's just that's what it is. And then you live home because you grow up and you leave for the big city, and all of a sudden you have to rely on shitty supermarket stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just like all of a sudden it's like, no, that's not what it's supposed to be. So from then on, from leaving my hometown and realizing, having this epiphany, my whole life's been about searching for that flavor again. My grandfather now is gone. I'm away from my hometown in my black forest with a mushroom. So my
mushrooms are awful, by the way.
I like them. You know, it depends.
Food of the devil. Anyway, keep going.
I'll show you. But the thing is, like, it's really just been a search for these childhood memories. My grandmother used to cook some simple dishes, you know, beef bourguignon, stuff like this, which I was never able to replicate again. And it's not due to technique. It's really the ingredient. It's really just like how good it can be, how simple it can be. So here we don't have the same ingredients. So how can you replicate the taste while adjusting to the big city supply chain and everything else that we're working with, obviously. Yeah.
Right. So tell me about the restaurants that are yours. What type of foods are they? And like for instance, okay, my place is Plan B. It's North American pub style, and we don't have any dessert at this point. And you brought me. And Mom, no offense, this might be the best cinnamon bun I've ever had. Like my mother's going, "How dare he?" right now. But it's very similar to hers. Like it's almost identical to hers.
Sorry, Mama.
Yeah, and I put a little bit of maple syrup on this one, and I didn't need it at all. It was perfect.
Delicious.
So tell me about yours. So we're going to start selling these cinnamon buns.
So the restaurants are called The Roots.
Why The Roots?
Because I don't know. It's just nice name. Sounds good. It's got a ring to it. And the food is very raw. It's very basic. There's not too much process to it. And we do Mediterranean food. And the Mediterranean Sea is really the root of civilization in Europe. As
Western civilization.
I don't know about like the whole of it, but at least the European civilization.
Sure.
And so it's really it's really back to the roots. And again, my search for my own roots, all of this, the search for that flavor that my grandfather, he used to make his sausage and smoke them. And so like, how can I find that again? It's really what it is. Plus I'm a bit into gardening and reggae music, so why not, So it's called The Roots. So we started off with a tiny little place in Yizhuang, which is southeast Beijing, 5th Ring Road. And it picked up, and then we opened a bigger place also in Yizhuang, and then we opened a kebab. So that was fun in partnership with a company. So they invited us on their campus. They've got like 5,000-6,000 employees. It's big, and so we opened a little cafe alongside their traditional Chinese canteen thing. And so we're doing kebab over there. It's really nice. It's delicious. So the food is Mediterranean, a lot of herbs, a lot of olive oil, a lot of vegetables, and grills. And mostly it's really about the positioning of it. So it's cheap and cheerful. We're about 100 kwai a pop per person.
Right. This is about $15.
Okay, yeah, for 15 euros.
How many
that'd be about yeah. So that's the objective. Is like one person, 100 kwai, 1 hour. We're in a residential area.
Well, let's talk about this. Okay, so excuse me. I'm in the CBD, the Central Business District, ish. I'm right on the edge of it. Lots of residential areas. There's lots of people around. It's this bedroom community for the people that go right into the heart of the city. You took a bit of, I think, a gamble, and it seems to have paid off by going to a place that's not quite as well known. You went farther out in Beijing, and you went to a place called Yizhuang. And I went to Yizhuang. It's far, man. And I know you're going to say it's not far. I cycled.
That's all right.
It's like 20 kilometers.
Yeah,
it's far, man. It's far.
It's doable. It's handleable. It wasn't a gamble. We did a lot of research. So we came here in 2012 with the objective of opening a business. And then we did 1.5 years of market research. So first of all, decide on what kind of business, like what do we do, like art gallery, restaurant, So the skills laid in F&B, I like it. Then let's go with restaurants and where. So we scouted, we did a whole carpet research over Beijing, 798, Sanlitun, east, west, north, everywhere. We checked everywhere.
So you weren't going for foreigners then? Because they really, especially when you guys opened up, there weren't a lot of foreigners out in Yizhuang.
No,
right?
there's still no. Still
I know you, and I know like 4 other people that live out there.
But as a market research, you decide your model based on like the most difficult thing to obtain, and that was real estate. So it was about getting a place that would actually not be too expensive for what it was, right? Or already most of the areas in Beijing are kind of
outrageously expensive.
Exactly. So
like mine. Yeah.
So we were left with like south and west. So like Fengzhuang, Fentai, and Yizhuang. We got that sweet little deal in Yizhuang, and so we devised the market, the positioning of the restaurant based on this.
How do you? Okay, so I knew what I was going for. Basically, my whole philosophy was when I opened up an F&B was I'm going to get the foreigners that miss traditional pub food. This is what they generally can't get, like real deal pub food. And then I also thought, so many Chinese have traveled now. They've either gone to school abroad or they've been living abroad.
Yeah, they'll know bacon.
And they know real Western food. Not like the days when I came in early 2005.
Yeah.
Like the Western food was horrific back in the day. And so I think now my whole thing was Chinese will want proper Western food as well. So that was sort of my philosophy. But yours had to be a lot different out there because you didn't, like when I started off, I was 80% foreigners, 20% Chinese. And now I'm probably 60% Chinese, 40% foreigners.
I'm the other way around.
This is it. So how did you know what the Chinese were going to, because I found the Chinese generally like Chinese food and it's sometimes hard to get them out of that unless they specifically want like
But then again, we
Thai or
did our
Indian.
research. I mean, without dwelling too much in strategy and bore your the listeners.
Well, no, I
But
mean, this is the thing. Like, how did you even come up with the idea to
but we
go?
did the research, so we're dealing with each one. So who lives there? They live there, and usually they work either they work around or they work in a city. So it's really not a place to go and splash some cash. It's a place where you're gonna have to be convenient, fast, tasty, and obvious. Hopefully, not too expensive, so they can come often. It's a place where you're gonna have to rely on regulars, and indeed, it's a place where a lot of locals live. It's a nesting place, you know. It's like a
Mhm.
suburb. A lot of them are foreign educated, so like kind of your crowd, but there's very few foreigners. You know, some people they want to open a place because they really just want to bake that apple pie, and that's all they want to do. It wasn't that. It's just more of like, okay, so now we have a place, which was the most difficult thing to acquire. So we have a place that is reasonable rent. What do we do? Like, what's around here? Like, what's the competition like? If someone else does already sauerkraut and pork knuckles, and I'm probably not gonna try and do that. I mean, it would be stupid.
Right. You're
So I-
dividing the same pie.
yeah, exactly. It's dumb, right? So I'll just do something a bit different, and so that's how we devised it. So we again 1 year and a half of 18 months of market research. It's really.
So, what did you find? Like, sort of like when you said Chinese like grilled meat. I think everybody likes grilled meat.
Yeah.
Is this is what the basis of
the
your thought was?
the style was mostly based on people's taste, but then again, the taste.
Did you have to educate the people out there to sort of like like okay, we do. I think originally it's called a French dip. There's actually, do you know this story behind this?
There's a lot of things that are called French.
Well, no.
something.
This was this guy named Philippe in Los Angeles back
Uh-huh.
in the day, and he used to make these beef sandwiches. And this cop came in, wanted one of his roast beef sandwiches, and he dropped it into the drippings when he made it by
Oh,
accident. And the
okay.
cop said, "I'm in a hurry, just give me the sandwich." So he did, and he came back the next day with like 4 other cops and said, "Whatever you did to that sandwich, do it again." And so this is why this French guy in Los Angeles is called a French dip.
Okay.
But I didn't want to call it a French dip because I think the Chinese would just say like, "What's a French dip?" I just call it a beef dip. All right?
People put French on everything.
You're right.
Anyway, yeah.
So, but okay, my point was this. Now that I've rambled around, that I had to educate a lot of the Chinese on what it was. Say, look, this is what you do. You dip it in the sandwich, and like I had to. Now I've got like a loyal following of Chinese because they really like it. I mean, everybody likes it. It's fantastic. Everybody should do one.
I bet you would.
But yours as well. When you're talking about Mediterranean food, did you have to go through that education process?
What we're trying to do is choose a path of least resistance. So you can either stick to your guns and educate everybody around you, and it's gonna cost you time and effort and
I'm
years
stubborn
of
that
your
way,
life.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you can
I'm
kind of
stupid
try
that
and
way.
do it, try and find a way that you kind of stick to your roots. You kind of still do it in a way that will make your mama proud, and yet that will please the people. So, like you say, the grills. We went Mediterranean because that was kind of the climate in Beijing, and the supplies and the ingredients and the produce were kind of similar. It would have been stupid to go Sweden food, or like northern Europe, or just the ingredients aren't there, so it would be more expensive and the quality would be weaker. Instead, here in Beijing, what I noticed, like in the markets, you got aubergines and peppers and chilies, and you got some yogurt, and you got plenty of like lamb, and so okay, well then. What do we have here? What can we do? Like, obviously, grills and salad, boom, done. So again, it was the path of least resistance. It was like how available are these supplies?
Mhm.
We of course we educate a few customers, but my wife being Chinese and being my partner on this, she kind of filters a lot of the bad decisions that I might make, because anything we do, like first she tries and she's harsh. And she'll slap me. She'll just like.
I've never
put
met
me
one that
down.
didn't.
You know what I mean? She'll be like, "This is shit."
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's like traditional, the
Yeah.
lamb shawarma. And she's like, "Dad, no one will like this shit. Just go home." I'm like, okay. So like, hopefully we didn't have to kind of go into conflict with customers, try and explain and make our point, because she was there filtering most of the bad ideas to start with.
Well, that's a good thing to have. So bit of a different story. I opened up an original place called Grinders. The reason why my place is called Plan B is because I
You
lost.
mean before the app?
Yeah. Yes, before the app. Okay, here's the thing. This is
You're a
weird.
visionary.
Grinders became a gay app, and Plan B is now an after sex pill, so
well,
like
there you go.
an abortion pill. I'm like, Jesus, what's going on with all my
I
names?
can see you hanging on the internet.
Jesus, every time I open something, I'm scared to open my mouth. So Grinders I lost in the divorce, basically, right? And so I was just gonna like travel around Asia and just sort of get lost in that sort of world with what little money I had left. And my brother-in-law at the time, who was married to my ex-wife's sister, he said, "You know what you need? You need a Plan B." And he showed me this place, and I went, "Oh, actually, that's not a bad name." So your
Nice.
name is
Yeah.
kind of better than mine in the sense that mine's kind of a goofy now after sex pill, where yours the roots. Yeah.
As you were asking about the explaining, most of the explaining we do is actually on the name because people are like, what Shugan? Like roots. Like for them, it's like it doesn't roots for us means your hometown, your like the
Right.
stuff you
Where
the
you
stuff you grew
where
up
your
with,
roots.
exactly.
Yeah.
But here it doesn't. They probably use a different name for it. It doesn't really ring. They're like, why you call roots? Like just well we explain.
All right. So I don't want to make this about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to talk about it because, it's prevalent throughout the globe.
Still is.
And, we were the place that hit the hardest at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So what did it do for you? How did your business, I know you had to do a lot of adapting. How did it happen?
Yeah, we're in a bad financial situation because we went to an investment deal and it fell through just before New Year. So basically, we invested a lot of resources, be it time, money, and everything into that deal, and it didn't go through. And so we were left with really weak finances, high overheads, with like a second tier kind of management team that wasn't necessary for our size, but we were planning on the future, right? We were future proofing ourselves. And so COVID hits, New Year, Chinese New Year. Everybody's in the dark, but no one really thinks about it too much. And boom, we were due to reopen like very early on, like 2nd or 3rd of January, lunar calendar. So like 2R, 2 sound kind of. So okay, so what do we do? Like people now, they can't get out and there was no celebrations, there was none of them. So my wife freaked out a little bit. I try and keep a cool head. And so basically it was gather data. It's like, okay, so what happens? What's happening? What do we have? Gather data about ourselves. Like, what do we have left in a stockroom, in resources, in time, in people, in everything? How much money? How long can we last? With no business. And then, where's the business? So where do people go? Obviously,
did you have to lay people off?
No, because people in China during Chinese New Year, people go back to their hometown, and because of that COVID, so basically people got
they
locked.
stayed. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was about they came back, but like drip by drip, like one by one, they came, which. Perfect. Damn, that was perfect. So we adjusted. So like, okay, so where's the business? People are stuck at home. They're freaked out. They don't know what's happening, a bit like us. So they're still gonna want to eat, and they can't even go to the supermarket to buy the food, right? Because no one wants to go outside. It was crazy. So okay, so we're gonna do food that we can bring to their home instead. And then, okay, so what do we have? Because there was no supplies. The food markets are closed. Suppliers are on holidays. Everybody is off. So what do we have? Like 3 onions, 2 carrots, and a slab of meat. So we did really simple. We stayed flexible enough so we could adjust to the situation. Kept on adjusting as the market evolved. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was early.
Well, what you guys did, which I thought was really great, and what I never did, because the way things here, and I've heard people, well, everybody gets on me about this, but I rail against delivery. I think it's the worst thing, like the delivery services, Meituan, Uber Eats, all these nonsense. Whoever they are, I think they're the worst thing that's ever happened to our industry, F&B. It's too easy to just sit at home, and people getting used to it, and they just want to stay home, and they don't go out for beer, they don't socialize. It cuts into our profit margins. Those companies aren't really making any money except for through VCs. But you did something a little bit different. You didn't rely on those big guys.
Well, we delivered ourselves. They had no drivers anyway, and no matter what.
So does that mean you're out there on your bike dropping off food?
But that means we had to figure out, because again, like everybody else, we were in the dark. I have a car, so I wasn't on my bike. We were left in the dark, but we had to kind of reconnect with the customers because these Meituan guys, they weren't there. Their drivers are home, right? Yeah. They're like, again. So we had to kind of re-bridge and find the distribution channels. And I think that's where speed was of the essence. Because we were competing with Chinese chains. Although we do Western food, but I'm not comparing myself with like restaurants in Sanlitun. You know what I mean? Well, I'm comparing myself with Chinese chains which do the same price point. So like Shibei, Yunhayao, and these guys are like massive.
Nobody knows what those are. Explain what those are.
So these are like 100 kwai. So like again, $15 a head, kind of traditional Chinese food. But they're giant chains. They've got thousands of outlets over the country. And these guys were about left in the dark as much as we were. But we're small, so we're flexible, where they weren't. Nimble, you know what I mean? So we had to kind of work very, very fast. It was really a speed game on like reaching the delivery channels, reaching the customers where they were now. So people now stay at home. Okay, so we need to kind of go into the estate. Every estate, every compound has management groups on WeChat,
Right, and they wouldn't let you in, though. Right?
Exactly, but now, of course, because
You
you
had to
got
drop
to.
out.
But if you're the first one, they might make an exception. When every other restaurant is knocking on the door, of course they close the door. They're like, no, listen, that's just too much offer and stuff like this. But if you're in the first week, when everybody's still in the New Year's slumber and we're already like back on, because again, we have no money. It's not because we like to wake up early, but we had no choice. We're in a bad financial situation, so we had to freaking whip ourselves on the butt, right? So we reacted very, very quickly, and we kept on adjusting. So as people started leaving home and having an access to the supermarket again, so they could cook at home, then okay, so we moved on. Okay, you restart working, then we'll go to work, because we know your company doesn't have the canteen open just yet, so you're probably going to want a lunch. So we moved on to work management WeChat groups and infiltrated these, with our little offers and like pre-book online, we come in at 12, 11:30.
How did you know to do all this stuff? I mean, to be honest, me and Ian sat there drinking beer and staring at each other going, what next?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's I don't know how we. My wife is an extremely hard worker. Once we decide on the idea, maybe she doesn't have the intuition, but once we set on the idea, she just do the legwork. So she opened a lot of these doors. And again, because we're in Juan, so it's not as competitive. People know us, we know them. So we have a crowd of customers that they live here all day or they work over there, or because they have the trust in us and they know that we're not here to rob people. So they will help us open these doors. It helped us afloat. Most importantly, it helped us shuffling some good. Getting some goods out the door, so we wouldn't be sitting on stock.
Studying stock, yeah.
That
was us. I mean, we were sitting on alcohol stock.
Exactly, and that's money, and that's stock that you've paid for.
Yeah.
You have no revenue, so you'd rather just be selling that stuff. That was part of like the assessment that we did. It's like, okay, what do we have? We have absolutely no money to buy anything. Okay, so forget about cheese, forget about land. What do we have in the fridge, and what do we have at the market next door that we can pay cash on the day? Because we didn't even know if we were going to be open the next day. Right. It was really just like a fight to live another day. I was extremely stressful.
Yeah. So how has it changed your business overall now that we're coming out of it?
Well, some of these things we started actually sticking around. So the banchampion, the pre-cooked dishes at home, like this kind of, okay, fine, it's useless now, it's hot, people go out and they cook. But like the company, corporate deliveries, for example, that's sticking. I'm still doing the rounds. We have 3 cars on the road every morning, just, taking orders and like driving around. That changed us on a management level. Like we used to be very stiff for a 3-outlet mini company, you know what I mean? We used to have that manager level thing and like that structure in place, which is good. You need structure. You need all of this support for when you want to grow. But we have learned to embrace flexibility and awkwardness a little bit, in like not exactly knowing what's coming tomorrow, and we've learned to work with that. But it's a bit chaotic. And it requires us another set of skills to kind of survive in a chaotic environment.
Well, you seem like you're quite nimble. Maybe it's the size. Yeah, it seems like you have a good partner in your wife.
Mm-hmm. We work well together.
That probably, it works well. Me and Ian, my business partner, Ian.
Your wife?
Yeah, he's my bar wife, my beer wife, and we get along quite well. We work together quite well. He does more of the service. I do more of the back end. I do the kitchen stuff. But we don't have that Chinese element in our business. Like we have an assistant, Allie. She doesn't listen to the show, and I know I'm always wailing on Allie, but there's days when she's just useless. I mean, I'm not just hammering on Allie for no reason. Like she's it's because we love her. She's like family, and so this is, I think, because she can just sort of blow us off sometimes. I want that what you have with your wife.
It's a lot of
well,
work.
You know what though? I think that also is it not hard to have that relationship in business and at home, because this was a big cause of one of the reasons when I got divorced. We were working together and living together, and it was very hard to marry those two lives.
Yeah. It's a major cause of divorce, like for people when they work with a partner.
I would never do it again.
It's unbelievable. It's stressful. It's crazy stressful. But then again, like we're two adults, we're intelligent enough, hopefully, to kind of not let work eat on life and the other way around. And
but how does it not? Because it's basically your day life.
I'm very authoritative, and I'm not too like how you call it, impulsive. I'm like, if something happens, you know how people jump when they hear like if there's a noise next to them and they go like shit. And I'm the opposite. Like noise happens and it takes me just 5 seconds to realize something happened, and these 5 seconds actually kind of help to kind of okay, what, so you're not scared anymore, and so I'm not impulsive either in in my approach to life, while she might be. And when sometimes problems at work, because we argue, because she works hard, but I'm not always working hard, so she gets mad at me, and then she tries to bring that home, but I'm like, no,
Baby,
work's work, baby, I love you, we're at home now, she hates it, but she knows I'm right. And sometimes we argue at home and we can't bring it at work because you don't want to. So it's about not being impulsive. That's the point I was making. It's like, don't be impulsive. Are you mad? Yes, you're mad, I know. Just chill, you know what I mean. And it's dangerous because you've got all your eggs in the same basket. That's like your life is tied to your work, it's tied to your retirement plan, it's tied to the,
I know.
Yeah, if it collapses, everything collapses. It's
Yes,
not like you lose your job. It's like you lose everything.
You lose everything. I know.
But the deal was, just when we started, the deal was like, we're not gonna let that business be a cause for divorce. I'd rather lose a business than lose the marriage. You know what I mean? That was
well,
the
that's
deal.
good. It seems like you prioritize things well, and therefore the business follows the marriage.
Exactly. Sometimes, of course, we bring work at home. We spend evenings just still chatting about work and stuff, which is good. We kind of get a bit of extra time compared to other businesses. When they clock off and they just clock off, we're still into it. But sometimes we have to kind of split. We have to kind of like be in separate rooms because we've been together for the whole day,
right?
And like on working on like issues that we can't find ways out.
You guys have kids, right?
We have one kid. Yeah. We're kind of figuring it out as we go. Right?
F&B's a tough one too. That's not great for relationships.
No, it's not.
Like we drink too much. We stay out too late, smoke, do whatever. You do the things that you shouldn't do. Like it's not generally. So sometimes it's hard to separate some of that. So I really commend you on that, because it's a very, very difficult thing to do.
Yes, yeah.
So what do you see happening over the next year? I mean, I know you're a data guy, you're an information guy. You want to have all of that, but what do you, if you're going to pick up your little magic 8-ball, what do you see happening?
Looking at patterns, well, first of all, it's not gonna go back the way it was. That's kind of clear, because people have learned, just like we've learned a set of skills, and we've learned about ourselves in our businesses. People have. They've learned that they can cook rice and saute some cabbage, and they learned how to cook again.
Maybe that's a good thing overall. Well, I mean, just for humanity. Of course, maybe not for our business, but for humanity, maybe that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, of course it is. It's less waste, the better, like more sustainable, right? And a lot of things have lost a lot of values. People had savings in stock market that crashed. People had tenants in their second home that just didn't come back. And people freaked out. And not only they freaked out, but they used to kind of splash and spend a bit because they knew they had money in the bank, in the stock market, and this and that, and all this is gone. And they've been out of work for like 3-4 months. They're probably going to hang on more tightly to the money and to the available income that they have to spare. I don't know if you remember how you call it.
I have a friend, and she keeps saying, well, the Chinese, you don't understand Chinese culture. We love going out, and we love getting together and having these gatherings and things. And they do, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think that you're correct in your analysis, in that I don't think it's going to go back to what it was, at least not for years.
Yes, and because they've lost money, and so they've lost a little bit of that safety feeling. So for us,
this is it too. I think a lot of it, China has only known up since I've been here, since 2005. China's only known up. Okay, financial crisis came around, but China led the way out of that. Yeah, by all that government spending, and
we're probably going to see a little bit of that too.
Well, yeah, but this was different. This had a different feel to it, to me at least, than all of that. And I think that this one gave a scare to people. And I think it's going to be a longer, lingering sort of feeling where people aren't going to generally. Last night was great. After you left, because you were here yesterday at my place, we had a big group of Chinese come in, and I went, yes, this is what I want to see. They were drinking a lot. They weren't eating much, but they were drinking and having a pretty good time. Nobody was wearing masks. They were at a table of, say, 8 or 9.
Be chilled now,
yeah. And I went, that's the attitude, but I had rarely seen that. And I don't think we're going to see a lot of that.
The thing is that we're in different industry, because you're in the leisure industry.
More alcohol,
My restaurant is really the weekly takeaway. They go Malaxiangguo on Tuesday, and then they come to the Roots on Wednesday, and then the Thursday they go hot pot, right? So it's very simple. But still,
by the way, Malaxiangguo is like this
kind of stir fry, spicy stir fry.
It's so good.
So it's basically a kind of takeaway. So just like, okay, in our countries, people would go Chinese food on Tuesday, they'd come to my place on Wednesday, and then they'd go for like
Italian or whatever.
Italian, exactly, on Thursday or
Sandwich
Friday
or whatever. Yeah.
So what we'll see is, I think, is a go back to the roots in like places which have a higher value for money, a little less of that perceived luxury splashing cash. You know what I mean? So people were still gonna go and spend, but they're kind of gonna look at what they're getting for their money, which happens after every crisis. But we're starting having a little bit of that last year. The stock market was kind of shaky, and it was a little bit right. And so
Well, going into it, our numbers were down going into this.
yes, exactly. So no one was really in a very healthy kind of like, woo,
Yeah.
it's just, no, everybody was kind of, what's going on,
Yeah.
like what's happening. And so the future, I think, is going to be, we're going to see still less and less, fewer and fewer of these big ass places, luxury places, it's going to be small places, very flexible model, flexible produce, able to deliver and hit just a little neighborhood. We're not gonna see a rise in individual neighborhood identity just yet. Although your place here has got a little bit of its own identity.
Starting,
yeah, exactly. It's gonna start, but I think it's gonna be another few years on that. But flexibility in the neighborhood that you are, according to the people that live around and the time of the day it is. Because when you rent a place now, so you have 50% of the customers you had last year. So you need to fill up.
Lucky.
Yeah, so you need to fill up on the other time. So it's not about how many people come for dinner, because dinner is done, okay? But can you do an afternoon tea? Can you do a lunch delivery, corporate deliveries like we do? Can you do a morning breakfast? Can you do, you know what I mean? So it's about using that space as much as possible. So I think we are not in for a ride, but I think landlords and malls, shopping malls, are in for a ride.
Brick and mortar like mall stuff, they've been killed since this thing started.
I think
it's funny. People could just say, "Well, we want free rent," and I want free rent too. That would be lovely.
That'd be nice.
But these landlords aren't devils. Like, they've got their own expenses. Like, these guys have to pay all kinds of stuff too. Like, it's not like they're just big, fat. Well, I'm sure they're quite rich if they built these things, but still, like,
I have trouble feeling sorry for them.
It's because they have more money than us, but still, they've still got, like, these things go broke too.
Well, they do, of course they do. But then again, it's like you're looking at, we haven't stopped supplying a produce for the service. Okay, these guys are a supplier. We pay them some money, so they supply us with something. Usually, what it is footfall. Is a good place which has all the licenses. We are allowed to do business, and we have enough customers going in front of our door, so we can actually grab some of that. Okay, if the customers are not there, I'm sorry, but it's not that.
How can you ask for that? Yeah.
I mean, they're like, you're not providing me with a service. It's like, I understand you got overheads, but there's no customers. You're not providing me with what I pay for. I pay for licenses and I pay for footfall. If the footfall is not there, I'm sorry, but I'm only getting half of my money worth.
In this complex, we only have 2 open entrances. There used to be like 8 gates that you could go in, and you could just walk in. Now you have gates in front of it and guards there, and so they just won't let people in or out. These guys have been pretty good, to be honest, for us, because, well, the first day I jumped up and down, ooga booga, like I jumped like an ape, screaming like an idiot that I am. And they're like, calm down. All right, we'll let your guys in. And they did. And so I can't complain too much, but I know a lot of these other places, coffee shops and stuff like that, none of those customers were getting to any of these guys, and they weren't delivering anything. And yet they're still saying, well, where's my rent? And you're going,
well, there you go. Yeah. So like you're nice, but like, listen, I don't have customers coming to me and like they're giving me 80 kwai and they only get half of a burger.
Yeah.
Like of course not. It's like, why? That doesn't work like this. I'm sorry, it's not your fault. I understand, but then again, that's what we did with our landlord. It's like, it's a mall, it's a rundown mall. Okay, it's not like one of them sexy malls and stuff, but still, we went to him like, listen, no money. We can't pay the rent, so like, we can go. Fine, we pack up, we go. Like, don't
see you later.
Or you can
keep our deposit.
Exactly, and we can kind of try and hang on in there and then kind of catch up with the payment when things, if they restart, right? So that they took the second option. Thank God. So we're still here. That's really what it is. It's a service. They're your suppliers. Okay, they supply you with a service for the money that you give. Like, I don't care if you got overheads. Like, I got overheads. Did people care? They don't.
Is it the same in France? What's going on?
It's a lot less. It's a lot less. Like in the malls thing, we don't have so many of them. Even in the city, it's a big country with a lot fewer people, so there's a lot of space. I don't know. I didn't really follow the news on the coronavirus thing. I have no idea what's going on there.
Wow.
Got enough stuff to do.
You got enough shit on your plate right here. You don't need to go. No,
just making sure my mama is good. She's good. My brother is good. They're good. Okay, fine.
I'm the exact same way. Mom, dad, brother. Everybody's all right.
Exactly.
All right, there we go.
I'm good.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today. I think this has been extremely beneficial for me. I learned a lot about adapting, which I'm not generally good at. It takes me a little while to mull things over, where you seem to be quite nimble.
I've tried to kind of put my ego on the side, like, okay, they're not criticizing me. They're criticizing my decision. So maybe the decision is wrong. You know what I mean? Don't shove stuff in people's throat. Kind of try and see what they like instead.
Yeah. Well, I have a hard time with this, as everybody who basically knows me knows. Well, I really appreciate it, man. I think this was enlightening, and I'm glad it wasn't just a COVID episode. Like, I'm kind of nice that we're getting out of that whole thing. Of course, we had to talk about it, but it's good that you've been able to been able to thrive through this time. If not thrive, survive, and then maybe start thriving.
Yeah, well, turns out we're actually in a better looking financial situation we are now than we were 6 months ago. We don't have more money than we did back then,
right?
But it looks on paper, it looks healthier, less overheads, more flexibility in the model. And
no, I know what you mean, because we went down to almost no staff. We had to redo a whole new menu. We cut out a lot of the fat.
Exactly.
We
exactly
trimmed down our operation.
Cut the fat. Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Antoine, again.
Pleasure.
I'm going to have you on in maybe 6 months or so and see how things have gone from there, if that's okay.
Of course.
Yeah, excellent. Everybody, you can, of course, if you're listening, you probably already know where to get the podcast, but you can get us on Apple or Spotify or Google Plus or Himalaya or wherever you get your podcasts. You can always download and follow us on here on Not a Team Player. So there you go, guys. That's our latest edition. Again, thank you, Antoine.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.